because I'm still breathing, and some of them aren't.
You chasing peace or ghosts?
Both.
Today you will learn a bit about the story of Robert Harlan, a retired Navy SEAL Master Chief, on a journey that takes him to the heart of national honor at Arlington Cemetery, where a simple demand for a handshake uncovers layers of unspoken respect and hidden family ties. Prepare for an exciting narrative full of emotion and surprises. Before we start this amazing story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're listening to this story from. In the crisp autumn air of Arlington National Cemetery, Virginia, the leaves rustled gently underfoot as Robert Harlan made his way toward the tomb of the unknown soldier. At 62 years old, Robert was a towering figure, his broad shoulders still carrying the weight of decades in the Navy SEALs. His face, etched with lines from countless missions in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, told stories of survival and loss that few could comprehend. Retired for 5 years now, he lived a quiet life in a small town in Texas, but today he had come here with a purpose that burned in his chest like an old wound reopening. Robert had always been a man of discipline and tradition. As a Master Chief, he had led teams through hellish operations, earning medals that now gathered dust in his modest home. But nothing haunted him more than the brothers he had lost, fellow SEALs who never made it back. That's why Arlington held such a sacred place in his heart. The tomb of the unknown soldier, guarded tirelessly by the elite sentinels of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, represented the ultimate sacrifice. Those guards, with their impeccable uniforms and precise marches, embodied the unyielding honor of the nation. On this particular day, October 15th, the sky was overcast, casting a somber shadow over the white marble amphitheater. Tourists gathered in hushed groups, watching the changing of the guard ceremony. Robert stood among them, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the sentinel pacing back and forth. 21 steps, a crisp turn, a pause, and repeat. The guard's name was Sergeant Marcus Riley, a young man in his late 20s, with a stoic expression that masked any personal thoughts. Marcus had been a tomb guard for 2 years, dedicating himself to this duty with the same fervor Robert once had for his SEAL missions. As the ceremony concluded and the new guard took his post, Robert felt a surge of emotion. He had read about the strict protocols, no talking, no deviations from the routine, but something inside him snapped. Perhaps it was the recent death of his old teammate, or maybe the weight of his own regrets. Whatever it was, Robert stepped forward, ignoring the invisible barrier that separated visitors from the sacred site. "Son," he called out in a voice roughened by years of command, "I've served this country longer than you've been alive. I demand a handshake, a sign of respect from one warrior to another." The crowd gasped. Marcus, mid-stride, didn't break his rhythm, but his eyes flickered toward Robert for a split second. Protocol forbade any interaction. The guards were trained to remain impassive, symbols of eternal vigilance. Yet Robert stood there, unyielding, his hand extended. Whispers rippled through the onlookers. A few pulled out their phones to record, sensing something extraordinary was unfolding. Park rangers nearby exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene. Robert's heart pounded. He wasn't one for dramatics, but this felt right. In his mind, the unknown soldier wasn't just a symbol. It was every lost comrade, every unspoken goodbye. He needed this connection, this acknowledgement. Marcus continued his march, but as he turned at the end of his path, something shifted. The young guard's posture remained perfect, but there was a subtle tension in his shoulders. Would he ignore the demand? Or would this breach of tradition lead to something more? Back in Texas, Robert's wife, Eleanor, had tried to talk him out of this trip. "You're not as young as you used to be, Rob," she had said, her voice laced with worry. They had been married for 35 years, through deployments and the birth of their 2 children. Elena knew the toll service had taken on him, the nightmares, the survivor's guilt. But Robert was stubborn. "I need to do this," he had replied, packing his bag with the quiet determination that had defined his career. As the minutes ticked by at the tomb, the tension built. Marcus completed another cycle, his boots clicking sharply on the marble. Robert didn't budge, his arms still outstretched. The crowd held its breath, the autumn wind carrying a chill that matched the uncertainty in the air. Little did Robert know this bold act was about to unravel a surprise that would shake him to his core, connecting his past in ways he never imagined. The standoff at the tomb of the unknown soldier stretched on, the air thick with anticipation. Robert Harlan's extended hand hung in the space between tradition and defiance, a silent challenge to the unyielding protocol. Sergeant Marcus Riley, the guard on duty, maintained his flawless routine. 21 steps, heel click, shoulder arms, pause. But inside, Marcus was wrestling with a storm of thoughts. He had joined the army straight out of high school in Ohio, driven by a family legacy of service. His grandfather had been a Vietnam vet, and stories of valor had shaped his childhood. Guarding the tomb was the pinnacle of his career, a role that demanded perfection and emotional detachment. Yet, as he paced, Marcus couldn't ignore the older man's presence. Robert's uniform jacket, adorned with faded SEAL insignia, spoke volumes. Marcus had heard tales of SEALs, elite warriors who operated in the shadows. To break protocol could mean the end of his assignment here, a dishonor he couldn't afford. But there was something in Robert's eyes, a raw, unspoken plea that tugged at him. On his next turn, Marcus paused just a fraction longer than usual, his gaze locking with Robert's for an instant. The crowd murmured, sensing the shift. Suddenly, a senior ranger approached Robert cautiously. "Sir, you need to step back. This is a restricted area." Robert didn't flinch. "I've faced worse than rules, son. Tell him to shake my hand." The ranger hesitated, radioing for backup. Meanwhile, a small group of veterans in the crowd began to nod in solidarity, one whispering, "That's a Master Chief, he's earned it." The scene was turning into a spectacle, with more phones recording every moment. Back home in Texas, Elena Harlan was oblivious to the drama unfolding. She was in their cozy kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through old photos on her phone. Pictures of Robert in his prime, strong, smiling with his team, contrasted with the man he had become, quieter, more reflective. Their son, David, now a teacher in California, had called earlier. "Mom, is Dad okay? He seemed off when we talked." Eleanor sighed. "He's chasing ghosts again, but he'll be fine." Little did she know, this trip was about to bring those ghosts into the light. At Arlington, the tension peaked as Marcus completed another cycle. Instead of ignoring Robert, he executed a precise about-face and, in a move that stunned everyone, extended his gloved hand. The handshake was firm, brief, lasting no more than 3 seconds, but it broke every rule in the book. Gasps echoed through the amphitheater. Robert's face softened, a tear escaping down his cheek. "Thank you, soldier," he whispered. Marcus nodded imperceptibly before resuming his march, as if nothing had happened. Word spread quickly. By the time Robert stepped back, park officials were swarming. A stern-faced colonel from the regiment approached. "Master Chief Harlan, is it? That was highly irregular." Robert straightened. "With all due respect, sir, sometimes honor transcends protocol." The colonel eyed him, then pulled him aside. "Follow me, there's something you need to see." Confused but intrigued, Robert followed the colonel through a side path, away from the public eye, into a small administrative building nestled among the trees. Inside, the colonel introduced himself as Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Hayes. "That guard you just shook hands with, Sergeant Riley. He's one of our best. But what you did could have cost him his position." Robert felt a pang of guilt. "I didn't mean to cause trouble, it was just necessary." Hayes nodded, pulling out a file from a drawer. "I recognize your name from somewhere, let me check." As Hayes flipped through documents, Robert's mind raced. What was this about? The surprise began to unfold when Hayes paused on a page. "Harlan. Wait, are you related to Private First Class Thomas Harlan? Killed in action in Vietnam, 1968. Robert's breath caught. Thomas was his uncle, a man he had idolized as a boy but never met, lost in the jungles of Southeast Asia. "Yes, sir, my uncle." Hayes' expression softened. "Thomas is one of the unknowns interred here. His remains were identified years ago but reclassified for the tomb to honor all unknowns. But there's more. Sergeant Riley's grandfather served with Thomas. They were in the same unit." Robert's knees weakened. The handshake wasn't just a random act, it was a bridge across generations. Marcus had known. No, Hayes explained, Marcus hadn't broken protocol lightly. In a rare exception, after spotting Robert's insignia, Marcus had signaled discreetly to his superiors during a shift change. They had quickly pulled records and authorized the interaction, recognizing the profound connection. "We don't advertise it," Hayes said, "but moments like this remind us why we serve." Overwhelmed, Robert sat down, emotions surging. Surprise at the hidden family tie, gratitude for the respect shown. As he left the building, the autumn sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the cemetery. This wasn't just a demand fulfilled. It was a healing he hadn't known he needed. The revelation in the administrative building hit Robert Harlan like a tidal wave, stirring emotions he had buried deep since his SEAL days. Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Hayes continued, his voice steady but empathetic. "Your Uncle Thomas was a hero, Master Chief. His unit was ambushed near the DMZ, and he held the line long enough for others to escape. Sergeant Riley's grandfather, Corporal Edward Riley, was one of those saved. Edward never forgot it, passed the story down to his family. When Marcus joined the Tomb Guard, it became part of his motivation." Robert leaned against the wall, his mind flashing back to childhood stories from his father about Uncle Thomas. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Chicago, Robert had idolized the grainy photos of Thomas in uniform. It was those tales that pushed him to enlist in the Navy at 18, eventually becoming a SEAL. But the wars had changed him. Losses in the Middle East had left scars, both physical and mental. He had attended too many funerals, laid too many friends to rest. Now here in Arlington, it felt like the past was reaching out, offering closure through this unexpected link. Hayes handed Robert a faded photograph from the file, a group of soldiers in Vietnam, including Thomas and Edward, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning despite the mud and fatigue. Edward Riley survived the war, raised a family in Ohio. Marcus grew up hearing about Thomas Harlan, the man who saved his grandpa's life. Robert traced the faces with his finger, a lump forming in his throat. "I never knew the details. My family didn't talk much about it after he died." As they spoke, Marcus finished his shift and was relieved by another guard. Off duty now, he entered the building, still in uniform but with a more relaxed demeanor. Seeing Robert, he saluted sharply. "Master Chief, sir. I couldn't ignore who you were." Robert stood, extending his hand again, this time without demand. Their second handshake was longer, filled with mutual respect. "You took a risk for me," Robert said. Marcus shrugged modestly. "Protocol is important, but so is humanity. When they told me about the connection during the quick brief, I knew I had to do it." The three men sat for a while, sharing stories. Marcus recounted his deployments to Afghanistan, the camaraderie that mirrored Robert's experiences. "It's tough coming home," Marcus admitted. "The silence after the chaos." Robert nodded, opening up about his own struggles, the PTSD that Elena helped him manage, the therapy sessions that kept him grounded. "I came here demanding respect, but I got something better, a reminder that we're all connected." Word of the incident had spread beyond the cemetery. By afternoon, social media buzzed with videos of the handshake, captions praising the heartwarming breach of tradition. Veterans groups shared it, calling it a symbol of enduring brotherhood. Robert's phone vibrated with messages from old teammates. One read, "Saw the video, Chief, you're still making waves." He chuckled, but inside, the surprise deepened. This wasn't just personal. It was resonating with others who carried similar burdens. Back in Texas, Elena finally got a call from Robert. "You won't believe what happened," he said, his voice lighter than it had been in years. She listened as he detailed the events, the demand, the handshake, the family revelation. "It's like Uncle Thomas was watching over me," he added. Elena's eyes welled up. "I'm just glad you're okay. Come home soon." Their daughter Lisa, a nurse in New York, texted soon after, "Dad, that video is going viral. You're a hero again." As the day wore on, Robert and Marcus walked together through the cemetery, past rows of white headstones. They stopped at a memorial for Vietnam veterans. "Your grandfather owed my uncle his life," Robert said. "Now in a way you've given me back a piece of mine." Marcus smiled faintly. "Service doesn't end with retirement. It's in moments like this." The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a fitting backdrop to the emotional layers unfolding. But the surprises weren't over. As they parted ways, Hayes approached with another file. "One more thing, Master Chief. We've been reviewing records for a potential honor ceremony. Your uncle's story tied to this event might qualify for a special recognition." Robert's eyes widened. An official ceremony. It was more than he could have imagined. Overwhelmed, he thanked them, the weight of years lifting slightly from his shoulders. That evening, alone in his hotel room in nearby Washington, D.C., Robert reflected on the day. The demand for a handshake had started as an impulsive act of grief, but it had evolved into a profound connection, bridging generations and healing old wounds. Little did he know, the awe-inspiring ending was still to come, as this story would soon touch even more lives in unexpected ways. The next morning, Robert Harlan woke in his D.C., hotel room with a renewed sense of purpose. The events at Arlington had stirred something deep within him, a mix of surprise, gratitude, and a lingering emotion he couldn't quite name. Checking his phone, he saw the video of the handshake had amassed over 1 million views overnight. Comments flooded in. "This is what America is about, respect and connection," from civilians and "Semper Fi, Chief. You've inspired us all," from fellow vets. It was surreal. His private moment had become public inspiration. Robert decided to extend his stay. He met Marcus again at a nearby cafe, away from the cemetery's formality. Over coffee, they delved deeper into their shared history. Marcus shared letters from his grandfather Edward, describing the ambush where Thomas Harlan had sacrificed himself. "Grandpa always said Thomas was the bravest man he knew," Marcus said. Robert, in turn, recounted his SEAL missions, the covert ops, the close calls. "We lost good men too. It's why I came to the tomb, to honor them all." As they talked, a reporter from a local news station approached, having tracked Robert down through social media. "Master Chief Harlan, your story is going viral. Care to comment?" Reluctant at first, Robert agreed to a short interview. "It wasn't about breaking rules," he explained on camera. "It was about acknowledging the sacrifices that bind us." The segment aired that evening, amplifying the story nationwide. Calls poured in, from veterans organizations offering support to a producer interested in a documentary. Back home, Elena watched the news with wide eyes. "Rob, you're famous," she exclaimed over the phone. Their son David called too. "Dad, this is incredible. You've turned grief into something positive." Robert smiled, but the real emotion came from the personal growth. For years, he had isolated himself, battling inner demons. Now this surprise connection was pulling him out, showing him resilience through human bonds. Meanwhile, at Arlington, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes worked behind the scenes. He petitioned for a special ceremony to honor the Harlan-Riley connection, linking it to broader themes of military legacy. Approval came swiftly given the public interest. Hayes called Robert. "It's set for tomorrow. We'll have a small gathering at the tomb. Veterans, family, and media." Stunned, Robert agreed, inviting Elena to fly in. She arrived that night, embracing him tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. The ceremony was intimate, yet powerful. Under clear skies, a group assembled near the tomb. Marcus stood at attention, joined by other guards. Hayes spoke first. "Today, we recognize not just individual valor, but the threads that connect generations of service." Robert was presented with a commemorative plaque honoring Uncle Thomas and the unknown soldiers. Marcus received a commendation for his compassionate breach of protocol. As Robert accepted the plaque, tears streamed down his face. "This is for all who've served," he said, his voice breaking. In a touching moment, Marcus's family attended, his parents and siblings from Ohio. His father, who had heard the stories from Edward, shook Robert's hand. "Your uncle saved my dad. We're forever grateful." The emotion peaked when a young veteran in the crowd approached Robert afterward. "Sir, I was struggling with PTSD. Your story gave me hope." Robert pulled him into a hug, whispering words of encouragement drawn from his own journey. As the day ended, Robert and Elena walked hand in hand through the cemetery. "I demanded a handshake, but I got a family," he said. Elena squeezed his hand. "And maybe some healing." The surprise of it all left him in awe. How one bold act had unraveled hidden ties, sparked national conversation, and fostered personal growth. But the final twist awaited, one that would cement this as a life-changing chapter. In the days following the ceremony, Robert Harlan's life transformed in ways he never anticipated. The story of the demanded handshake and its surprising revelations became a beacon for veterans across the United States. Media outlets from CNN to local papers covered it, dubbing it the handshake that healed generations. Robert found himself fielding interview requests, but more importantly, invitations to speak at veterans events. "I didn't set out to be a symbol," he told Elena as they flew back to Texas. "But if it helps others, I'll embrace it." Upon returning home, Robert channeled the emotion into action. He started a small support group for local vets, sharing his experiences and the Arlington story to encourage open discussions about mental health. Marcus, staying in touch via email, contributed by sending resources from his regiment. Their bond grew, with Marcus visiting Texas months later for a family barbecue. "You're like the uncle I never had," Marcus joked, clinking beers with Robert. The connection extended to their families. Elena's warmth welcoming Marcus's parents, forging new friendships born from old sacrifices. The awe-inspiring ending came full circle when Robert received a letter from the Department of Defense. It detailed a new initiative inspired by his story, a program to connect living veterans with the legacies of unknowns at Arlington, using genealogy and military records. Robert was asked to be an ambassador. Overwhelmed, he accepted, traveling back to DC for the launch. Standing before a crowd of officials and vets, he spoke. "One handshake reminded me that our service echoes through time. Let's honor it by supporting each other." Personally, Robert's journey culminated in profound growth. The surprises, the family tie, the ceremony, the national impact had mended his fractured spirit. Nights that once brought nightmares now held peaceful reflections. Eleanor noticed the change. "You're lighter, Rob, like you found peace." Their children, David and Lisa, visited more often, drawn by the renewed energy in their father. Years later, Robert would look back on that autumn day at the tomb as the pivot point. What started as a demand born of grief ended in awe-inspiring connections, proving the power of human resilience and interdependence. The story didn't just leave him in awe, it inspired countless others to seek their own handshakes of healing.